Young Aussies won't stay and fight. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee, and let's have a look at this article written by Frank Chung for news.com.au, Why Young Aussies Wouldn't Stay and Fight. Now, I've spoken about this in the past. How many of you would be willing to go and fight for your country, or how many people do you think would be willing to go and fight for a country where they can't even afford to buy a home, or to get married, or to have a family? They're fundamental things that people want, or at least they wanted in the past. And one of the things of Australia was it was good times. You could easily afford a house on one income. You could easily raise a family. It was a safe and stable society, and in many ways it is. But the problem is the differences in the classes are compounding. We now have the amount of time it takes just to get into a property and to get a home and build a family takes so long. It's crazy. It takes longer now to save for a deposit to buy a house in Sydney or Melbourne than it did to pay one off back in the day for people that were going hard. So yeah, so let's look at this. Why young Aussies won't stay and fight. Most young people would flee rather than stay and fight if Australia was in the same situation as Ukraine, disturbing new polling shows. So, most young people would flee rather than stay and fight if Australia was in the same situation as Ukraine, new polling shows. Well, this is what happens when you have a very left-leaning society without anything cohesive holding it together. We're a multicultural society. If you're if you're a white male, you're lambasted as the evil that is everything. You're blamed for colonizing Australia. You're considered a racist even when you're not. It's just, yeah. You even have the system stacked against you. If you are applying for certain jobs, they've got positive discrimination based on race, gender, and ethnicity. So these are things that are occurring in Australia now. These are official government policies now. Look, so I'm not surprised. I mean, this is one reason why I would argue the MGTOW movement is becoming more popular among young men. I think it's sad in many ways. It's a bit of a drastic move, just particularly when they go monk mode and just disengage from society. I think it's not really a solution. Anyway, let's have a look. One veteran says the troubling finding shows a lack of higher purpose holding the country together. Yeah, that's it. I mean, even in our military, there's discrimination. Just look at the requirement for a female to enlist, how long they have to serve compared to a bloke. Wouldn't you love that when you're in the army? I think this shows that our younger generations don't feel emotionally invested enough in our country, in our plan for the future, and they're part of that plan. Retired Army officer Heston Russell told news.com.au. Military Planning 101 involves as many people in the planning process so they establish an emotional connection to the plan, take ownership of it, and are willing to fight for it. Well, this is what happens when Australia Day you have protests. Do you think all the people there that are protesting Australia Day, calling it Invasion Day, do you think they're going to be there wanting to defend this country? Not in the slightest. No, they don't give a shit. They're not even proud of the country. The survey of 1,000 Australians, commissioned by conservative think tank the Institute of Public Affairs, and undertaken by research firm Dynata late last month, asked respondents if Australia was in the same position as Ukraine is now, would you stay and fight or leave the country? Overall, 46% they would stay and fight, and 28% said they would leave the country. But younger respondents were more likely to say they would leave. Well, can you blame them? Can you honestly blame them? Someone who's younger, what chance do you have to get ahead? You can graduate, get for a uni, you've got debt, which isn't as bad as other parts in the world, but a shitty house costs $1 million. So you can fight and defend your country to keep the status quo going. Hey, maybe if we get taken over by Indonesia or China, you might have less taxes. I think someone looked at if the European Union collapsed and there was an Islamic Caliphate that took over, it would actually be cheaper for the people living there. Anyway. Only 32% of those aged 18 to 24 say they would stay, and 40% said they would leave. And 35% of those aged 25 to 35 say they would stay, and 38% said they would leave. As a result of the years of relentless attack on our values by the culture and media elites, young Australians are now so ashamed of themselves and their country, they would rather flee Australia than stay and fight if the needs arose, IPA Research Director Daniel Wild said in a statement. The negative safe hate view of Australian history and culture being forced onto students at schools and universities means they are now barely 1/3 of young Australians believe Australia is even worth fighting for. I mean, that's quite sad. It's not at all surprising. Mr. Russell, I mean, remember, you've got to understand this movement through the institutions. It's come out of old, Soviet indoctrination and education years ago, and it's all climbed up through here. And part of it was to really destroy Western values in the Western world, and you can see it's happening. I mean, it's a long game. It's a long game, but it's happening. Mr. Russell, 36, who is running for Parliament under the Australian Values Party, said there had been a huge cultural shift over the past 2 decades, and that younger people are no longer receiving that national inspiration. He said Australia had strong national unity after World War II, and major focal points like the 2000 Sydney Olympics. But unfortunately, the Australian culture where we used to celebrate those who go off to fight our wars or sporting icons like the Wallabies has been eroded. In my time in the military, there's no war outside the wire. The battles come within, he said. When there's no purpose to unite people under, we too often turn on each other. The last 2 years we've had states separating families, everyone attacking each other based on superficialities. The former November platoon commander, who last month won an apology from the ABC over reporting alleging his unit was involved in war crimes in Afghanistan, added that the Australian military had been pretty much desecrated through the media. One, we're lacking leaders, but two, our culture has turned to cutting people down. We're not there motivating each other and rising each other up, he said. The IPA survey also asked whether, given conflict in Ukraine and growing rivalry between countries in our region, the federal government should do more to teach school children to be proud of Australian history. My concern with this is we're just adding more to the curriculum. There's way too much in our education curriculum. What they need to do is, before we even think about addressing history, we need to really pull stuff out of the curriculum. I would say, honestly, if you want to get kids in learning about Australian history, you develop a Minecraft game based on it. Forget about the school curriculum. Ignore it. Make something external. 63% agree, while just 12% disagree. Mainstream Australians under their nation is a force for good in the world, and the results show they want future generations to be proud of our achievements, rather than constantly being berated and shamed by the noisy minority of elites, Mr. Wild said. Now, here's something we all have to realize, everyone. Our country, we're a democracy where we vote on representatives that go off to Canberra for us. Now, you've got to understand, it's the people who are going to have influence on those politicians are the advocate groups, the activists, the people that have the ears of the politicians. There'll be politicians that think Twitter is normal, the amount of rubbish on there, and they respond to that because that's all they ever hear. The noisy minorities, they are the ones doing the hard yards. They're the ones being noisy, so they're getting listened to. People see all this bullshit, and you see businesses responding to this stuff and making stupid decisions because they're responding to the minorities, not realizing that isn't the majority. The deceit which forms the basis for the national education curriculum must be replaced with the truth that Australia is one of the most tolerant, free and democratic nations on earth, and it's worth fighting for. Young Australians don't want to fight for Australia because the cultural elites in schools, universities and the media have convinced them there's nothing worth fighting for. I would say it's more than just schooling. I would say it's opportunities. ACU Senior Research Fellow Kevin Donnelly told Sky News on Thursday that events in Ukraine and China showed a need to talk about nation building in the Australian education system. The reality is, in Australia, we like to believe we're prosperous, we're safe, he told Sky News. If you add Russia, if you add what's happening overseas, really it is time to actually, in the curriculum, talk about nation building and about having a sense of ownership and pride in what we are as a nation. Why does everyone always go to the curriculum, guys? I was talking to Rachel about this, and she thinks every time there's like a pet peeve of an activist group or any group, they'll say, oh, we need to fix the education system. They want to talk about, what is it? I can't remember it now. Some other stuff they're adding to it just recently. Yes. Consent. Consent in primary school for toddlers. Okay, sure. In high school, fantastic. But primary school, they're adding too much stuff to this education curriculum, and this isn't going to stop it. But it's interesting. I'll have to look more in the Australian Values Party. I'll have to look into him because he's talking a lot of sense here, which is good to see. But let's have a look to a poll I did of my viewers. I asked you 2 hours ago, if Australia was invaded, would you fight to defend our country? 59% said yes, and 41% said no. So quite in line with what we're seeing here in the article. I'll just refresh that. It hasn't really changed. Let's have a look at some of the comments here. Billy the Kid, we've already been taken over. Advanced Dad, 23 years Army, and medically discharged for mental health reasons. I would defend my country for my children, and once the enemy without has been fought off, then the enemy within. Well, cheers to that, eh? I mean, maybe all the woke garbage that's getting too much attention might suddenly not be that important. I'm an immigrant in Australia, and I choose to live here, so I would fight for my country, Alex said. You're a reality guru. We've already been invaded and defeated, so what am I defending? I can't even go to the pub or passport, yeah. Ex-army too, another one. Richie, military invasions are almost redundant nowadays. Corporatocracies, got it, rule now. Governments are beholden to their corporate overlords. If only. If only. Hey, imagine if Google was running the country. Everything would be free, one way or another. So if you don't own land outright, or aren't promised land after the war, you don't fight, as general principle understood by ancient peoples. I pity the Anzacs fighting to sustain something that was never theirs. We're all subject under the crown. Look into it. That means you shouldn't help your local community or be charitable to your fellow man. I will die protecting my country, but not for the government's interests. Richard, it's more like you defend your government rather than your country, not this government. You're seeing a trend here. Matthew, sure, but those clowns from Gun Control Australia are up first. Well, you could see America could never be taken. Just every guy, you know. If a zombie apocalypse happened here in Australia, we're screwed. We're screwed. You know, you can't do a survival game in Australia. We're fighting every day. How would we defend the country? They've taken our guns away. Invasion is so old school. Infiltration from within is already going on. If Australia was invaded, the enemy wouldn't be the only people here I'd fight. It'd be carnage. Wow, surprised by the percentage of no responses. From Marcel. Yeah, I'm not really. There's a problem. The Australian government takes guns away from people. They don't want you to fight for our country because it's not your country. It's the government's country and business interest country. Okay, that's a bit long. You can read that one there. Michael, with what weapons? The enemy of Australia is in Canberra. You're dreaming. You're voted communists in power. Then you fight to defend them. Do you think cowards like McGowan and Andrews would fight? They wouldn't have to. They've got people to do it for them. I lost my sense of patriotism for this country. The government has gotten overly corrupt. Personal freedom and privacy are no longer existent now. Wars are created by the elite to make money and kill the population. Sunrise. You've got to be kidding. Australia has stabbed every man in the back. 45% tax rate. Or doesn't even get a pension when you retire. Housing costs so high you can't afford a family, resulting in your own genetic replacement. through mass immigration. 70% of taxes are generated by men. 70% of that revenue is distributed to women. Australia is a shithole. It's time to be honest and get over the indoctrination that this country is Australia. It's not Australia anymore. The invasion was successful, and we're currently living under occupation. Nothing left for me here to fight for. Lose your life to support the enemy? You got to be joking. Traitors, the lot of them. So Sunrise is a little pissed, and I think sums up some important issues here. You know, why defend if you don't see a future in this country? So, Rohit, it will never happen. Seriously, what is there to defend? If we had true freedom, I'd fight to the death for it. When you have a society that would happily take away what you have and a government that enables that, there's nothing worth defending. Well, that's Australia. We're a Benthian society. We'll take away from minorities to give to the majority or those with the political power. Fight to defend for our traditions like like negative gearing that keeps me out of the housing market, or the news cycle that calls men idiots every day. I'd rather speak Chinese. I'm giving that one a heart. Well, yeah. Can you blame people? Okay, you've got... here's the thing. There's no discussion. Well, a little bit of discussion. Here it's about the negative view of Australia that he's raising awareness of. But no discussion about just how hard it is to get ahead in this country these days. Where are the adults? A great general thing I'm noticing with these polls. Authority, privatized profits, socialized losses. That seems to be what's happening in Australia, guys. What are you going to fight with? Sticks and rocks? No, it'll be the emus. We'll launch the emu battalions. Someone's invading. Let's check their vax passport if it's safe to engage. Long Dong John. A country that treated me like a prisoner in my home for 2+ years and continues to exclude me from wider society for not subscribing to their twice-a-year program. Why should I? Not for a Labour-controlled far-left socialist Australia, Vote Labour at 2022 says. I would for the original Australia that lives up to its values, freedom, respect, fairness, and equal opportunity. See, they are from the right, from right to left, not for some greater good bullshit. Chris, moot point for the unmedicated. Not allowed to drink a coffee at a cafe. Do we still have that in place? I mean, I've never been asked once. Well, the only time I've been asked for my vaccine status was in a hospital. And that was just visiting, and that was the security guard. When I went through ED, the emergency department, no one even cared. You know, and I said to the nurse, oh, you need to check it when we go upstairs. And she goes, I hate asking that. I'm not going to do it. So there you go. A little bit of civil disobedience on an individual level. So, my best answer, I don't know. I want to help, but I don't want to die. I don't think I could live with killing another human being. That's an honest response there. You don't want to go through all that trauma. Send the rich elites and loudmouths first, and then I might consider. I used to know vets, army personnel who got injured. They were thrown on the scrap heap and neglected very badly. Do not expect the government or anyone to help you once you're injured or used. Yeah, well, that's the sad reality. Those in power don't even afford me the right to defend myself in everyday life. Why would I risk life and limb for them? If you haven't worked it out yet, Florian, we've already been invaded. Bar Undi. No, we haven't. We've just got... Well, no, you're just starting to learn, mate, what Australia is really like. That's the reality. It's a very left-leaning country. We're not Americans. We don't have a culture of individual responsibility or freedom. We're meant to be these, tough larrikins, but that's all bullshit, guys. Even you go to the country here in Australia, you got 5G phone reception and running water and everything perky. Come on. Seriously. Depends on who invades at this point. Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, you could have better life. Nebulous thoughts. However, I think a lot of people understand that wars today are old rich men sending young men to the meat grinder for resources, glory, and God. Here's the thing, for all the people who are, on Ukraine's side or Russian side, would you send your own children to fight? Would you want Australian boys to go there and die in a conflict like that? Yes, but I'd ensure all feminists are in the first wave. Why would you fight for a country whose main inhabitants are woke people who always want the government to fix every problem that pops up in their life? No thanks. So let's have a bit of a talk about this one, guys. I can't say that I'm at all surprised what we're seeing here. I'm concerned that there are calls for just more in the education curriculum. I think the people making those calls haven't really looked at the curriculum probably in some time. That's the experience of a homeschooling parent looking at the curriculum. Yeah, there's too much in there, guys. This is why schools don't cover it. They just bullshit it all the time. And this is why you get to a point like this. So 40% of people won't fight for Australia, won't defend it. That's concerning. People need to be more proud of their country. And a big part of that is helping people create a life here. You want to fight for your family, for your children. You want to protect them. You're not going to protect them if they don't exist. If you can't afford to have them. Let me know what you think, guys. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe to the channel if you're a fan and enjoy the content I find and put together here. There are a few ways you can help out. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon, sign up for SelfWealth or Stake, or use our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend, and I will see you all next time. Bye for now. Why has that movie stopped playing?